Why did the mountain feel so quiet that night? Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Through the scope of a M82, 6 men glowed white in the dark, silhouettes unaware that someone had already measured their heartbeat, their distance, their fate. They laughed quietly among themselves as if darkness made them invincible, but darkness had never saved anyone. The woman behind the rifle exhaled slowly, so slow the air vanished before it became visible. Her pulse fell 50, then 40 beats per minute. Calm, measured, detached. Her finger rested on the trigger as if it belonged there. 6 men, 6 rounds. 12 seconds. The sound cracked through the mountains, yet it felt muted, contained by the cold air. Each round found its mark. Center mass, surgical precision, no hesitation, no wasted movement. When it ended, she disassembled the weapon, her hands moving with ritual familiarity. Not rushed, not slow, just exact. She packed her gear and vanished into the Afghan night. 6 bodies lay cooling in the dirt. By sunrise, they would be written into reports as tribal casualties, accidents of war, not a sniper's hand. She would be written out of history just as always. 3 days later, nothing remained. No records, no name. And yet here she was. The morning at Fort Benning smelled of pine and red clay. A transport van hissed to a stop, brakes squealing and boots thudded against asphalt. Staff Sergeant Reed stepped down, duffel slung casually over one shoulder. 35 years old. Brown hair pulled tight, posture crisp, her uniform indistinguishable from anyone else. Nothing remarkable, nothing that screamed lethal. Except the eyes. Colonel William Harrison, watching from the shadow of an administration building, noticed them instantly. Dark, restless, always moving. They searched exits, blind spots, windows, calculating. Not paranoia, precision. He knew the pattern. He'd seen it before, decades ago, in soldiers built for wars the world was never supposed to know about. Her file had been ordinary, too ordinary, 3 tour, Iraq, Afghanistan, commendations, nothing flagged. And yet Harrison's instincts, sharpened by Vietnam, Panama, the Gulf, the shadows of a dozen secret conflicts, screamed otherwise. When she reported in Staff Sergeant Reed, reporting for advanced combat training, sir, her voice was steady, unremarkable. The admin officer barely looked up, gave her a barracks, rattled off a schedule. But Harrison kept watching. She didn't take the obvious path toward her barracks. She skirted buildings, cut angles, avoided open ground, always preserving visibility. A soldier who'd spent too long in places where mistakes killed quickly. She entered barracks C like she was entering contested ground, claimed the corner bunk, back to the wall, 3 steps from the emergency exit, unpacked with military neatness, boots aligned, shirts folded, toiletries by height. Precision wasn't a performance, it was survival. That's when the voices started. Well, look what we got here. A man's tone mocking 3 bunks down. They'll let anyone in now. Captain Daniel Blake, 30, granite jaw, carried himself like he owned the room. Behind him, his unofficial pack, Mitchell, muscle stacked like concrete. Carter, sharp-eyed and sharp-mouthed. Wilson, nervous energy wrapped too tight. Reed nodded at them, then kept working. I asked around about you, Blake continued, stepping closer. 3 tour, expert marksman, impressive on paper. His smirk widened. But I'm wondering how much of that's real and how much is just the Army ticking diversity boxes. Silence fell in the room, every man watching, waiting. Reed closed her locker softly, turned and met his eyes. Calm, controlled. Captain, she said evenly, I'm here to train, not to validate my service record. If you have concerns, take them up with command. No defensiveness, no apology, no fear. Blake wasn't ready for that. His smirk faltered, but he pressed on. I intend to. I've seen what happens when standards drop. People die. Before Reed could respond, another voice cut through the tension. Gravelly, authoritative. That's enough, Captain. The barracks froze. Colonel Harrison stood in the doorway, silver hair, weathered face, still sharp as a blade. Blake snapped to attention, jaw tight. "Sir." Harrison's eyes scanned the room, settled on Blake. "Captain Blake, Thomas Blake's grandson, isn't it?" Pride flickered across the younger man's face. "Yes, sir. General Blake was my grandfather." "I knew him," Harrison said, his voice calm but carrying weight. "Good man. Flew B-17s. Shot down over Germany, wasn't he? 2 weeks behind enemy lines before extraction." "Yes, sir." Pride swelled in Blake's chest. Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. "Funny. That's not the whole story, is it? He was rescued by a woman, Captain Elizabeth Johnson, WASP pilot. Flew an unarmed P-51 into contested airspace to pull him out." A pause. The barracks held its breath. "Your grandfather didn't think women belonged in combat. Said they weren't strong enough, not stable enough. Changed his mind after one saved his life." Harrison let the silence hang, then turned toward Reed. "Staff Sergeant Reed, report to admin at 700 tomorrow. The rest of you, first formation at 800. Everyone starts clean here. Everyone has the chance to fail spectacularly." He left, the door closed heavy. Blake glared at Reed. "We'll see what the colonel says when you wash out in week 1. Reed met his eyes unshaken. "I guess we will, Captain." Later, lights dimmed, the barracks softened into uneasy quiet. Reed sat on her bunk, back against the wall, eyes half closed but never still, watching, cataloging, calculating. To the others she might have seemed to rest, but Harrison, watching discreetly through the window, knew better. He recognized the posture. Not sleep, not rest, predation. A soldier waiting. Morning came. The rifle range stretched under the burnished sky, targets shimmering from 100 to 800 meters. The air carried the faint scent of brass and sun-baked dirt. "Precision assessment," barked Sergeant Major, 30 years in uniform. His voice carried the calm menace of a man who had trained killers his whole life. 30 rounds. Make them count." 20 soldiers dropped into position. Reed settled at her station. Every move exact, scope check, bipod steady, cheek weld measured. Her form was flawless. Shooters commence fire. The air filled with cracks and echoes. Brass flew, targets splintered, soldiers grunted. All except Reed. She lowered the weapon slightly. Finger never touched the trigger. Her form was perfect, but she did nothing. Boots thudded behind her. "Problem with your weapon, Staff Sergeant." "No, Sergeant Major." "Then why aren't you firing?" "Just aligning my shot, Sergeant Major." "You've had plenty of time. Fire or clear the line." She nodded once, took aim, and still nothing. 10 minutes later the ceasefire whistle blew. Targets riddled with holes, except hers, clean, untouched. "Reed, what the hell was that?" demanded, voice low, dangerous. "I was unable to establish proper sight picture." Calm, professional. Blake smirked from 2 stations down. "Maybe give her something smaller, less recoil." Chuckles rippled along the line. Spen scored the clipboard. "Remedial marksmanship at 1600. If you can't qualify, you're done." Reed nodded. "Crystal clear, Sergeant Major." She walked off the range steady, not embarrassed, not angry, just measured, controlled. But Harrison had been watching from the tower. He'd noticed something no one else had. Her eyes tracking a hawk circling overhead, calculating wind drift, range, firing solution. Reflexes automatic, instincts perfect. She could have fired. She chose not to. Why? That night Harrison made another call. "This is Harrison. I need everything on Reed. 2004, deployment details, medical files." Because something wasn't right. And in his experience, when something wasn't right, people died. Why would a sniper refuse to pull the trigger? That question hung over Fort Benning like humidity. No breeze could shake. Reed's squad gathered at the obstacle course before sunrise. Rope climbs, wall scrambles, mud crawls, the kind of course that punished hesitation and rewarded brute will. Sergeant Major's voice carried across the field, sharp as gravel. 15 obstacles, 30-minute time limit. Fall behind, and you'll run it again in full battle rattle. The whistle shrieked. Soldiers lunged forward like the ground had caught fire. Boots pounded mud. Breaths grew ragged. Mitchell muscled over the 8-foot wall first, landing hard. Carter followed, smooth and fast. Then Reed. She approached, paused, 3 seconds of silence, and then she sat down, cross-legged in the sand, hands on her knees. "Reed, what the hell are you doing?" Mitchell shouted from the far side. She didn't answer, didn't move, just breath, calm, measured. Carter barked from above the wall. "Move your ass, we've got a clock running." Soldiers vaulted, cursed, stumbled past. Sweat-soaked uniforms, mud-streaked faces. Reed stayed still like the chaos around her didn't exist. 15 minutes later, the squad came around the far bend, heaving for air. Reed rose, dusted her pants, and jogged back into formation, as if nothing had happened. Blake's face burned red, helmet ripped off, jaw tight with rage. "Outstanding. Hope the enemy waits while you take a nap." Nervous chuckles rippled. Reed's expression never changed. Mitchell spat sand. "Yeah, she's saving her energy for the ride home." But Harrison, watching from the course's midpoint, didn't laugh. He'd seen this before, a perfect preparation followed by total withdrawal. Not incompetence, not laziness, something deeper, something programmed. That evening he sat in his office, eyes scanning the classified folder Colonel slid across his desk. The red stamp screamed, "Top secret, special access required." "Sleepwalker," said flatly. The word struck Harrison like a memory he didn't want. Inside the folder, Reed's recruitment, Project Vice, psychological conditioning, deployment scrubbed from records, gaps in her file that smelled like erased years. Recruited after, explained. Operational for 6 years, Pakistan, Yemen, Afghanistan, high-value eliminations. Then she drops off, disappears, reappears with a neat little transfer story. Intel analysis desk, but that's a cover. Harrison's jaw tightened. Rehabilitation. Nodded, periodic, not all subjects took well. Harrison's eyes fell to a photo of Reed in her 20s, younger, clearer. The guarded mask she now wore hadn't yet hardened her features. She was part of it. "She is part of it," corrected. "Orders came from the top. General wants her here, advanced combat training." Harrison leaned back, voice low, dangerous. "As what? A student, an instructor, or a test case?" Hesitated. His silence said more than his words ever could. "You're holding something back," Harrison said. Bill sighed, eyes dropping to the folder. "There's been talk, reactivating Cold War programs, Vice, Bluebird, Berlin all over again." Harrison's voice cut sharp. "Haven't we learned anything? Berlin was a massacre." Both men went silent. The memory of that winter in 1986 still haunted them. An operator who'd broken conditioning. 17 dead, 3 Americans among them. A weapon turned loose without control. "Sleepwalkers aren't designed for this environment," Harrison muttered. "You put one here, among soldiers who don't know what she is, you're playing with fire." His voice dropped to a whisper. "It isn't my call. She stays until the final evaluation." That night Reed was alone in the gym. Pull-ups, controlled, perfect. Her form almost inhumanly precise. Blake and his pack walked in. Their footsteps echoed. Their voices filled the cavernous space. "Well, if it isn't Sleeping Beauty," Blake mocked. "Taking a break from your naps." Reed dropped from the bar, landed silently from 10 feet. She wiped her hands on a towel. Mitchell and Carter spread wide, instinctive flanking. Wilson hung back, unease written in every line of his face. Blake stepped closer. "What are you really doing here? Because whatever game you're playing, it's insulting." "I'm not playing games, Captain," Reed replied evenly. "I follow orders, same as you." "Your orders include sleeping through drills," Mitchell growled. My performance is my concern, Reed said calm. Blake's jaw tightened. When it affects my team, it becomes mine. We're not a team, Reed said quietly. We're a training cohort. The shift in her tone was subtle, but Blake felt it, danger radiating in a way his instincts couldn't ignore. Carter misread it. He picked up a ka-bar from the table. The blade caught Jim light. Maybe you need the right motivation. He tossed it toward her. Her hand snapped up. The knife never touched the ground. She caught it midair, grip perfect, blade aligned, hand steady. The movement was too fast, too practiced. For a moment, silence swallowed the gym. Every man felt it, the shift from soldier to something else, something honed. Then she placed the knife gently on the bench. We're done here. Blake's eyes flickered. Combat instinct told him what words wouldn't. She wasn't bluffing. He muttered, let's go. They left, all but Wilson. His eyes had fixed on her forearm where her sleeve had slid up. A scar, jagged, shrapnel, surgical revisions. That's from Kandahar, Wilson whispered. Root Irish, 2007. Her gaze locked on him, calculating, dangerous. How would you know that? My father was there, 10th Mountain Division. He has the same scar pattern. Her eyes narrowed. That op was classified. Wilson's voice shook, but he pressed. It never made your service record, I checked. Blake's voice called from the doorway. Wilson, move it. Wilson backed out, but his eyes never left her. There's more to you than you're letting on, Sergeant Reed. The door closed. Reed stood alone, her hand drifted to the scar. Her breathing hitched, posture snapping, combat-ready, instincts surging. For an instant, the mask cracked. She was Staff Sergeant Reed anymore. She was something else, something lethal. And then, with visible effort, she buried it again. Neutral face, measured breath, calm mask. Wilson, outside, walked with questions he couldn't shake. He remembered the way his father had once muttered after too much bourbon words about protocols, partitioning, things he shouldn't have known. And now, seeing Reed, Wilson was certain. She had been in places, done things, and someone wanted those secrets buried. The next morning, urban combat simulation, 2-story plywood buildings, narrow alleys, rounds, chaos designed to mimic war. Hostage rescue, unknown hostiles, civilians mixed in. 15 minutes barked. Blake stacked his team on the door. Ram swung, wood splintered, soldiers rushed inside. Reed entered last, weapon raised. And then she peeled off, into a corner, sat down, closed her eyes. Within 60 seconds, Blake was hit. Carter down. Mitchell followed. Wilson held out longer, desperate, but the squad was shredded, all while Reed sat motionless, breathing slow, detached. Game over, his voice cut through alarms. His face stormed. Reed, if this continues, you're gone. One more failure and you're finished. Yes, Sergeant Major, she replied calmly. No anger, no fear, just calm. But Harrison, watching from above, felt the chill run deep. It wasn't incompetence. It wasn't nerves. It was something else. Because when Reed closed her eyes, she wasn't shutting down. She was listening to something no one else could hear. And Harrison knew. Sleepwalkers weren't designed to follow orders. They were designed to wake. Why do some moments echo louder than others? Not the medals, not the parades, but the ones you'd give anything to forget. November 2004. The city was dying. Buildings stood as skeletons. The air carried dust and the acid bite of explosives. Fires smoldered. Every corner threatened death. Specialist Reed moved with her fire team, M14 at the ready, scope catching fractured sunlight. She walked in rhythm, 5 steps, pause, scan. Years later, she would still hear the cadence of her boots against rubble. 2 clicks to the mosque, Sergeant whispered. No sign of the HVT. Reed's eye caught movement. 2nd floor, right flank, a shadow crossing windows. Her voice was calm. Armed male, AK-pattern rifle, mid-30s, black headband. Lieutenant's voice crackled over radio. Matches description of Salem. Confirmed HVT. You have a shot. Her heart slowed. Breathing fell into sniper rhythm. Calculations formed faster than thought: wind, drift, elevation. I have a shot. Execute. The rifle bucked, the man crumpled, the war rolled forward. Target down, she reported. Then the counterfire came. A crack, concrete exploded near. Another shot cut Private down, shoulder shredded. Sniper shouted, cover. Reed's mind raced angles, impact patterns, sound delay. Minaret, she called, 2 blocks north, 800 meters. That's outside your effective range, snapped. Another shot screamed past. They were pinned, bled into the street. Sir, Reed said, her voice like steel, I need a. Orders flew. She sprinted through debris, reached Staff Sergeant Hayes's position. The massive .50 cal M82A1 already rested on its bipod. I need it, she said, dropping beside him. Hayes studied her. Wind's tricky. Reed ignored him, settled in. The scope found its ghost, the sniper's shadow in the minaret. Half a mile, variable gusts, partial cover, a nightmare shot. But Reed's pulse slowed to sniper calm. Her world narrowed to crosshairs. The thundered, dust and stone shattered. Through her scope she saw the figure fall. Hayes muttered, holy hell. That's an 800-meter shot in urban wind. Who the hell are you? Reed rose, already turning back. Just a soldier. She rejoined her team. They cleared the building where Salem lay dead, but the victory soured in an instant. A sound, a whimper. In the corner, huddled and trembling, was a child, a girl no older than 7. Her eyes were wide, terrified, not of the soldiers, not of the rifles, but of the body on the floor, her father. The HVT. Reed froze, her weapon lowered. The girl's gaze cut through her, not with anger, not with fear, but with something worse. Witness. She saw everything, Reed whispered. Her voice cracked. Later that night, Reed sat alone, cleaning her rifle with mechanical precision. Hayes approached, his tone softer now. That was impressive shooting, but I can see it's weighing on you. Reed didn't look up. The girl, she shouldn't have been there. Hayes sighed. No, but her father shouldn't have been a high-ranking insurgent either. These are impossible choices of war. How do you live with them? She asked, eyes burning though she never blinked. Some don't, Hayes admitted. Others compartmentalize, and then there are a few who learn another way. He slipped a playing card across the table. No name, just a number. When you're ready, call. Ask for Project Vice. Reed studied the card, her face unreadable. What makes you think I'm the right kind of soldier? Hayes held her gaze. Because I saw you make that shot, and I saw your eyes afterward. Both matter to us. He walked away. Reed stared at the card long into the night, the memory of the girl's stare seared into her mind. She never called the number. Not then. But in truth, the decision had already been made for her. Years later in Georgia, when barked at her to wake up, Reed wasn't just hearing his voice. She was hearing the echo of the child's eyes, the impossible choice. And in that gap between orders and action, in the silence she carved for herself, lived the secret no file could capture. She was a soldier who had once pulled the trigger without hesitation. And a woman who never stopped hearing the sound afterward. Why did silence follow her wherever she went? Not respect, not awe, something colder. At chow, soldiers packed the dining hall in noisy clusters. Laughter, boots scraping against linoleum, the low hum of men finding comfort in numbers, and then Reed walked in. The noise dipped, not stopped, just faltered, like a ripple of unease had spread across the room. She moved through the line methodically. Same tray, same measured pace. Her eyes never fixed on anyone for long. Yet she saw everything, reflections in glass, doors half ajar, shadows that others missed. From the table near the center, Blake's voice cut through the clatter, loud enough for everyone to hear. Hey, sleepwalker. His squad smirked. Nap time again tomorrow, or you gonna stay awake this time? Carter grinned into his coffee. Mitchell shook his head like she was an insult to the uniform. Wilson forced a laugh, but it cracked under the weight of his uncertainty. Reed didn't flinch, didn't blink. She carried her tray to the far end of the hall and ate alone. Same bite size, same rhythm. The noise rose again, but not near her. Isolation was complete. Behind glass in a private dining room, Colonel watched. He noticed the nicknames spreading like wildfire. He noticed the way Reed's solitude hardened. He noticed, too, that she never once reacted, not outwardly, but he saw her eyes, always moving, always calculating. And wasn't the only one watching. That night in a briefing room built for Cold War secrets, and Harrison sat across from each other. The room's concrete walls swallowed their voices. Documents lay scattered on the table, black ink, redactions, photographs from Berlin no one was supposed to see. Harrison tapped one picture with a weathered finger, blood on walls, bodies twisted wrong. Berlin wasn't just a malfunction, he said, voice low. It was system failure. We never understood it. We never controlled it. Lean back, tired eyes catching fluorescent light. That was 1986. The science has changed. Science? Harrison's laugh was dry. You don't program human beings without breaking them. You think pharmacology and conditioning erase consequences. They don't. They bury them. And when they surface, his hand stayed on the photo. You get this. His jaw tightened. Reed is different. Different? Harrison's voice rose, but only slightly. Or more dangerous. She has compartmentalization, countered. Natural dissociation. She doesn't carry what would break most. That's why Hayes pulled her in after. Harrison's eyes narrowed. That's not a gift, James, that's trauma, and you know it. The silence stretched, heavy, decades of classified sins pressing against both men. Finally exhaled. You always were the conscience of this program, Bill. That's why they sidelined you before Phase 3. Harrison stared across the table. Does she know what she is? Hesitated, and in that hesitation, Harrison had his answer. God damn it, Harrison muttered. You brought an active sleepwalker into my facility. She's not active, said quickly. She's in standby. Semantic bullshit. She can't be triggered without authorization, right? Harrison pressed. Looked away, correct. Harrison leaned forward, eyes like stone. And who qualifies to authorize her now? Because last I checked, the chain of command that ran Vice doesn't exist anymore. Silence stretched again. Harrison's voice dropped to a growl. You kept the activation protocols. Contingency planning, said quietly. The world is unpredictable. Harrison stood, his chair scraped the concrete. I want her out of my facility, tonight. That's not your call. The hell it is. This is my command. His voice went cold. General outranks you, and it was his order to place her here. Why? Harrison demanded. What's the end game? Concerns about other sleepwalkers, admitted. Reed could help us identify them, or confirm viability. Harrison's chest tightened. She's a test case. Didn't answer, which was answer enough. Hours later, Wilson found himself drawn to the gym. He should have been asleep. Instead, he lingered outside the door, hearing the steady thud of fists against canvas. Through the crack he saw Reed, moving around a heavy bag, strikes precise, fluid, efficient. Not army combatives, not even special operations hand-to-hand, something colder, designed not to fight but to end fights. Her eyes were sharp. Her body moved like memory had taken over. For the first time, Wilson saw her not as the woman mocked in formation, but as a predator unleashed. He must have made a sound. Reed's head snapped toward him. Who's there? Just me, Wilson said, stepping in, hands raised slightly. Her posture softened instantly, the predator vanishing, replaced by the neutral mask. You shouldn't be here, Private. Neither should you, he countered. It's after hours. She almost smiled, almost. I have insomnia. Wilson swallowed. Funny, you seem to sleep just fine during drills. The smile vanished. She studied him carefully. What do you want, Wilson? I want to understand. He stepped closer. That scar on your arm, it matches my father's, from an attack that never made the news, from a war that never made the records, and the moves you were just using, that's not standard. So what are you? Reed said nothing. She finished unwrapping her hands, folding the tape with military precision. My father tried to talk once, Wilson pressed. Said something about recall protocols, partitioning. My mom shut him down, called the VA. They adjusted his meds. He never spoke of it again. For the first time, Reed's eyes softened. Barely. He was protecting you and himself. From what? Her gaze drifted, as if listening to some far-off voice. From people who think soldiers are just weapons, disposable, replaceable, switches to flip on and off. Wilson's throat tightened. That's what you are, isn't it? One of them. Her silence was louder than an answer. Finally, she said quietly, the real danger comes when someone decides the rules no longer apply. The words sank into him like ice. As he left, she called after him, Wilson. He paused. Tomorrow, stay close to Blake. Blake hates me, Wilson muttered. That doesn't matter. He's predictable. Predictable people are easier to protect. Wilson frowned. Protect me from what? But Reed had already turned back to the heavy bag, her fists striking with mechanical rhythm, as if the bag were the only thing keeping her from unraveling. Behind glass, high above the gym, Harrison watched her through a monitor feed. His gut turned heavy. Because he knew the truth refused to say aloud. Sleepwalkers weren't soldiers. They weren't leaders. They weren't even people, not in the eyes of those who'd built them. They were loaded weapons. And weapons always fire when someone pulls the trigger. Why does the night feel louder before a test? Every sound sharpens, every silence deepens. Soldiers call it nerves, but for Reed it was something else. She lay on her bunk, eyes half shut but not asleep. She never really slept. Her breathing was steady, measured, the mask of rest. But behind her stillness she counted. 1, 2, 3, every breath, every shift in the barracks, every door opening and closing down the hall. Wilson rolled in his sheets, restless. Blake snored with the confidence of a man who believed the world was his. Mitchell and Carter whispered in the dark, plotting tomorrow's evaluations like chess players rehearsing moves. Read it all, every detail, every vulnerability. Her hand drifted toward the scar on her arm, the shrapnel memory, the girl in her body tensed almost against her will. The picture came again, unbidden. The father dead, the daughter starring, a gaze she could never erase. Reed. The whisper came from the doorway. Harrison. His voice carried weight even at a whisper. Step outside. She rose silently, boots slipping on without laces. She followed him into the cool Georgia night. The sky above was clear, sharp with stars. You're not sleeping, he said flatly. I don't, she replied. He studied her. You've been through programs I wish I'd never heard of. You've carried things no one should carry. And tomorrow wants you evaluated like a soldier fresh out of Ranger school. Her face remained unreadable. Then I'll be evaluated. That's not the point. Harrison's jaw flexed. The point is what happens if you fail or if you succeed. Sorry. His eyes narrowed. You know what you are, don't you? Silence long, heavy. Finally she said softly, I know enough. Harrison stepped closer, his voice lowered. Then you know what they'll do if you prove too dangerous to control. Her pulse slowed again, instinctively, like before a trigger squeeze. You mean termination? He nodded. Won't say it, but that's the real evaluation. Not whether you pass, whether you can be contained. She met his eyes. And you, what do you want? His voice cracked under years of ghosts. I want one soldier to walk away without being broken by this system. Just one. For the first time, Reed's mask shifted. Not a smile, not a frown, just something human. That's a dangerous wish, Colonel. The next day would decide if it was impossible. While Reed returned to her bunk, Harrison drove across base to a secured building that didn't exist on any map. Waited inside. Fluorescent lights hummed above rows of locked cabinets. A steel case sat on the table between them. Final Prep said, "We need to discuss contingencies." Harrison glared at the case. "That's the trigger kit, isn't it?" His eyes flickered. "Insurance." "You son of a—" Harrison cut himself off, voice a low growl. "You swore she was inactive, that there were safeguards." "There are," said, calm but firm. "But if things spiral tomorrow, if she loses control, we have protocols. This kit initiates recall, brings her down." "Recall?" Harrison spat the word. "You mean override, drug her, shock her, treat her like a malfunctioning machine?" "Better than letting her kill everyone in the room." His voice hardened. "You saw Berlin. I won't let that happen again." Harrison slammed a fist against the table. "Berlin happened because you people treated soldiers like tools, and now you're doing it again." Stare was steady. "Don't pretend you're innocent. You built Phase 1 with us. You knew the costs." "And I walked away," Harrison shot back. "You didn't." The two men locked eyes, years of buried guilt burning between them. Finally sighed, voice quiet. "The truth is, Bill, we need her. The world hasn't gotten safer. There are operators out there, other sleepwalkers. Some went rogue after their handlers died. We need one of our own to track them." "And if she refuses?" Harrison asked. "Then she fails evaluation, close the case with a click, and she disappears." Meanwhile, in the barracks, Wilson stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. His mind raced with images of Reed in the gym. Her words, protecting him from something unseen. He rolled over. "Reed," he whispered. No answer. Her bunk was empty. He rose quietly, slipping on boots. He found her outside, sitting alone by the bleachers, moonlight painting her features in cold silver. "You don't sleep either, huh?" he said softly. She didn't turn. "Sleep is dangerous." He sat beside her. For a long time neither spoke. The night hummed with crickets. Finally he said, "Blake says you're a fraud. Mitchell says you're broken. Carter thinks you're dangerous, but he hesitated. "I think you're carrying something, and I don't know what it is, but it's heavy." Her jaw tightened. "Heavier than you can imagine." "Then let me help carry it," Wilson said, almost pleading. For the briefest moment something flickered in her eyes. Gratitude, sorrow, it vanished as quickly as it came. "You can't. Some weights are designed to crush anyone who touches them." He looked away, throat tight. "Tomorrow's evaluation, they're setting you up, aren't they?" Her silence was answer enough. When morning came, Reed stood at formation like nothing had passed between them. Blank, calm, the perfect mask. Barked orders. The final evaluation would be brutal. Multi-day field exercise, long-range precision fire, high-stress decision scenarios. Every weakness would be exposed. Blake smirked across the line. "Don't fall asleep, sleepwalker." Reed said nothing, but her eyes, calm, dark, unflinching, fixed briefly on Harrison across the field. He gave the smallest nod, a silent vow. One soldier, just one. But as slipped the steel case into the trunk of a black SUV nearby, Harrison's gut twisted, because he knew. Tomorrow wasn't just a test. It was a trigger. Why did the evaluation feel more like a hunt than a test? Because someone had written it that way. At dawn, the convoy rolled into the training grounds. Forests stretched wide, pine needles carpeting the earth, air thick with morning haze. To the recruits, it was just another exercise. To Reed, it felt different, too clean, too deliberate. Sergeant Major gathered the cohort at the staging area. His voice carried across the tree line. "Final evaluation, 48 hours, you will operate as a squad. Your mission, locate, fix, and eliminate a simulated high-value target in enemy-controlled territory. You will be graded on tactics, marksmanship, cohesion, and survivability. Fail, and you're done. Blake grinned at his squad. Hear that, squad, which means no naps this time. Mitchell chuckled. Carter loaded his mag with exaggerated bravado. Wilson's jaw clenched, eyes flicking once toward Reed. She stood silent, expression unreadable. Load up, barked. They moved out. Hours into the patrol, tension grew. Every rustle in the brush, every crack of a branch felt like an ambush. Blake led with aggressive confidence. Mitchell covered the rear, muttering about dead weight. Carter scanned flanks with twitchy energy. Wilson stayed close, shadowing Blake just as Reed had told him. Reed drifted in the middle, not too close, not too far, watching, listening, every step, every shift of the wind measured. Then contact. Sim rounds cracked from the ridge. The squad hit the dirt. Contact front, Blake shouted, his voice brash, overcompensating. Mitchell laid suppressive fire. Carter scrambled for cover. Wilson froze, caught between instinct and fear. Reed's rifle came up smooth, exact. She tracked the targets with unearthly steadiness, but her finger never pressed the trigger. Return fire, damn it, Blake screamed. Reed, take the shot. She didn't move, didn't blink, just breathed. Carter cursed, she's doing it again. Round stitched the dirt inches from Wilson. He dove behind a stump, heart pounding. Blake crawled toward Reed, fury blazing. You're gonna get us killed. But then Reed spoke, calm, detached. There are two shooters, not one. Elevation 70 meters apart, range 900 meters, wind cross-shifting at 3 knots. Wait. And then silence. Her eyes unfocused, as if listening to something no one else could hear. The world around her blurred. Her pulse slowed. She was Reed anymore, not fully. Sleepwalker. Her body shifted like a machine reawakening. She adjusted her scope, fired once, then again. Both targets dropped, headshots clean. The range too far for anyone else to believe. The squad stared in stunned silence. Blake's rage twisted into something else, fear. What the hell was that? Reed blinked as if waking. Her breathing quickened. She lowered the rifle slowly, almost trembling. Reed, Wilson asked softly, are you okay? Her eyes darted to him, haunted. She didn't answer. Blake wasn't satisfied. He stormed toward her, face inches from hers. You don't pull miracles like that after 3 days of failing drills. You're hiding something. What are you? Her jaw tightened. I did my job. No, Blake spat. You did something else, something not human. Before she could answer, his voice crackled through the radio. Excellent shooting. Target neutralized. Squad, continue mission. The order cut off the confrontation, but the question hung in the air like smoke. Hours passed. They pressed deeper into the forest, tension fraying nerves. Every man glanced at Reed differently now. No longer as a liability, no longer as a joke, but as something unknown. That night, under a canopy of stars, they made camp. Blake stayed on watch, packing. Mitchell cleaned his rifle obsessively. Carter mumbled about witchcraft shooting. Wilson sat near Reed, hesitant but drawn in. You didn't just guess their positions, he whispered. You knew. Her hands stilled on her weapon. She didn't look at him. Sometimes I hear patterns before they happen. That's not normal. I'm not normal. He wanted to press, but her eyes finally met his, and what he saw froze him. Not malice, not madness, just fracture. A soldier holding too many pieces of herself together, knowing they could scatter at any second. Far away, in the black SUV parked near the range tower, monitored through live feed. Grainy night vision showed Reed's every move. He set the steel case on his lap, fingers brushing the biometric lock. Harrison sat beside him, fists clenched. Don't you dare. If she destabilizes, began. She hasn't hurt anyone, Harrison cut in. She saved them twice. His eyes stayed on the screen. That wasn't saving. That was activation. and once she's fully activated, she won't stop. You don't know that. I do, said quietly, because I've seen it before. The glow of the monitor lit both men's faces. Reed sat in the dark, staring into the forest, still, watching, listening to something no one else could hear. And Harrison realized, maybe was right. Maybe the line between Reed's will and her programming was already gone. The next day tested it. The squad approached a village mock-up, plywood huts, mannequins posed as civilians. His voice came over comms. Hostiles among non-combatants. Time limit, 10 minutes. Blake barked orders, pushing his team inside. Carter fired too fast, clipping a civilian mannequin. Mitchell cursed. Wilson hesitated, scanning desperately. Reed moved differently. Calm, fluid. She identified hostiles instantly. Double taps precise, not one stray round. Then a new variable. A mannequin child placed in the corner. Behind it, a hostile target raised its weapon. Her scope froze, her breath hitched. The girl filled her mind. The stare, the silence. She lowered her rifle. Reed, take the shot, Blake roared. She couldn't. Sim rounds ripped across the room. Mitchell went down with a hit to the chest plate. Carter yelped, tagged in the arm. Reed, Blake screamed again. She closed her eyes, and that's when the whisper came, not from outside, from within. A voice buried deep, rising through the cracks of her mind. Execute. Her hand trembled. Her finger brushed the trigger. Her heart raced, but her body wanted stillness. Eliminate. She squeezed. The hostile dropped. The child mannequin untouched, perfect separation, impossible timing. But when it was over, she sagged, weapon lowering as if it had drained her life. Blake stared at her like she was a stranger. Carter muttered, "That's not training, that's programming." Wilson's voice was barely audible. "What did you hear just now?" Her lips parted, but no words came. From the tower's hand hovered over the case. Harrison grabbed his wrist. "Don't, she's still fighting it." His jaw clenched. And what happens when she stops fighting? The answer lay in Reed's silence. Her eyes locked on the child mannequin long after the squad had moved on. Because deep inside she knew, one day she might not stop at the hostel. One day the voice might win. Why does betrayal always come from inside the wire? Because enemies outside aren't half as dangerous as the ones who know your name. By the third day of the evaluation, the squad's nerves were shredded. Sweat clung to uniforms, packs dragged at their shoulders, tempers snapped with every misstep. Blake barked orders with venom, his voice cracking like a whip. Mitchell's patience frayed to open hostility. Carter muttered curses under his breath, fingers twitching around his rifle. Wilson kept glancing at Reed, caught between fear and the strange loyalty she had planted in him. Reed herself was silent, always silent, but her silence was no longer dismissed as weakness. Now it was suspicion. "Eyes on her," Blake muttered to his men as they pushed through brush. "She's not right, she's hiding something." Mitchell spat, "Not hiding, programmed." Carter chuckled nervously. "Yeah, like one of those Cold War horror stories." Wilson said nothing, but his grip tightened on his rifle. That night, camped beneath the pines, the air felt heavier. Reed sat apart, as always, methodically cleaning her weapon. The others circled like wolves, debating whether to strike. Blake finally snapped. He rose, stomped toward her, eyes sharp with accusation. "Enough games." Reed didn't look up. "Stand down, Captain." "You don't give me orders." His hand shot out, shoving her shoulder. She didn't move, didn't react, just kept assembling her rifle. "You've been playing us since day one," Blake spat. "Failing drills, sitting out missions, then suddenly pulling miracle shots. No one's that inconsistent, unless," his voice dropped, "unless you're being controlled." Wilson jumped to his feet. "Blake, stop." "Shut it, Wilson," Blake barked. "She's a damn experiment, and we're the lab rats." Mitchell and Carter shifted uneasily. their silence dangerous. Reed finally set her rifle down. Her eyes met Blake, steady. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know enough," Blake sneered. "I know the Army's been running freak projects for decades. My grandfather told me stories. Men turned into weapons. Some didn't come back the same." He leaned closer. "That's you, isn't it? A weapon, not a soldier, not human." Reed's hand twitched, barely, but Blake saw it. Wilson stepped between them. "Stop it, she's still one of us." Blake's laugh was sharp. "One of us? She's not even one of herself." He shoved Wilson aside. Wilson stumbled, hit the dirt. That was the trigger. Reed moved, faster than any of them had seen. She caught Blake's wrist mid-swing, twisted, not enough to break, but enough to remind him how close he was to losing control of his own body. Her other hand pinned his shoulder, her voice low, dangerous. "Don't touch him again." The camp froze. Carter's eyes widened. Mitchell's mouth went dry. Blake's face flushed crimson, rage and humiliation twisting together. "You see that?" he spat to the others. "Machine reflexes, not human, I told you." Reed released him, stepped back, calm again, mask restored. "Go to sleep, Captain." But no one slept. Miles away in the SUV's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, and his face hardened. He hung up, turned to Harrison. "It's happening. She's destabilizing." "She's restraining herself," Harrison countered. "No," snapped. "She's splitting. The mask is breaking." He unlocked the steel case. Inside, a biometric injector gleamed. "Chemical override." Harrison's hand slammed down on the case. "You'll destroy her." "I'll save lives," hissed. "You think I want another Berlin?" "Berlin happened because you treated a soldier like a tool," Harrison growled. "You're about to repeat it." His eyes were cold. "This isn't your call." He keyed the sequence. Far off inside Reed's comm unit, a faint tone chirped, barely audible, subtle but unmistakable. Reed froze, her breath caught, her pupils dilated. The forest shifted around her, not in sight but in sense. The voice returned, not hers, not anyone's, a command buried deep. "Wake up." Her hands trembled. The world slowed. Every sound sharpened. Her heartbeats, the wind through pine needles, even the scrape of Wilson's boot against dirt, all measured, targeted. Wilson noticed first. "Reed, you okay?" She looked at him, but it wasn't her eyes anymore. It was something colder. Blake saw it too. "Oh God, she's flipping." Mitchell raised his rifle instinctively. Carter followed, panic etched in every line. "Don't," Wilson shouted, stepping between them. "She's still fighting it." But's voice came through her earpiece, smooth, commanding. "Execute phase 3." Reed's finger twitched near her trigger. Her body shifted into sniper calm, but inside she screamed against it. "No," she whispered, barely audible. Blake's face contorted. "She's about to kill us." Harrison's voice suddenly cut through the comms, overriding. "Reed, listen to me. You're not a weapon, you're a soldier, you decide." Her chest heaved, her weapon aimed almost against her will. Wilson stood in the crosshairs, his eyes locked on hers, pleading, desperate. "Reed," he whispered, "please stay with me." Her finger tightened, the world slowed. Inside, two voices warred. One, "Execute." The other, "Remember." The girl, the stare, the scar. Her weapon trembled. And then the shot cracked. For a heartbeat, no one moved, no one breathed. Wilson blinked, still standing, still alive. Behind him, a pine tree splintered where the round had buried itself. Reed's rifle dropped from her hands. She staggered back, gasping like someone breaking the surface of water after drowning. Blake stared, jaw slack. Mitchell muttered, "Jesus Christ." Carter's hands shook so badly he almost dropped his rifle. Wilson caught her before she fell. Her body trembled, every muscle quaking from the war inside. Far away, cursed, slamming the case shut. She resisted. "That's not possible." Harrison's voice was quiet but firm. "It's not science, it's will." Reed's breath steadied slowly. Her eyes regained focus. She looked at Wilson, voice hoarse. "I won't be their weapon." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Then what are you?" Her answer came like a vow. "A soldier, nothing else." But in the silence that followed, every man knew the truth. She wasn't free yet. Because once a weapon is built, someone somewhere will always try to fire it. Why does the final order always come as a whisper? Because whispers carry more weight than shouts when a life hangs on them. The exercise had shifted into its last phase, overwatch. A mock compound was staged 2 miles out, ringed with plywood walls and scattered mannequins. To the recruits, it looked like another drill. To Reed, it felt like the real thing. The squad set up in the tree line. Radios crackled. Target package confirmed. High-value hostile moving to vehicle. Sniper team take the shot. The voice it carried a weight heavier than both. A new channel, a SEAL commander's voice. Reed froze. Her body reacted before her mind did. She slid prone, assembling with ritual perfection. Bipod steady, scope aligned. Her pulse slowed, falling into that unnatural calm. Blake stared, uneasy. Who's giving those orders? This isn't part of the exercise. Wilson's stomach dropped. He looked at Reed, at the way she moved now, automatic, precise, like something inside had been switched on again. "Wait," he said quickly. "This isn't right. She doesn't have to do this." The commander's voice came again, harder. "Take the kill shot. 3,200 meters now." The number hit the squad like thunder. 3,200 meters, 2 miles, beyond Army doctrine, beyond most rifles' limits. Impossible, unless you weren't just trained but built. Blake's face paled. "This isn't evaluation, this is demonstration." Reed's eye found the target, a mannequin in a stepping toward the truck. Wind drift calculated, effect accounted. Distance impossible, but her mind mapped it with eerie clarity. Her finger brushed the trigger. Wilson crawled beside her, voice urgent. "Reed, you don't have to." Her lips parted, barely a whisper. "I can't stop." The voice inside her rose again. The programming, the command, execute. Her finger tightened. "Reed," Harrison's voice crackled through her earpiece, overriding channels. "Listen to me. You're not their machine, you're more than this. Remember the girl." Her breath hitched, the crosshairs trembled. The child's stare flooded her vision. The scar burned on her arm. "Take the shot, Sergeant," the SEAL commander barked. Blake shouted, panic edging his voice. "She's gonna do it." Mitchell raised his rifle toward her. Carter followed, terrified. "Stand down," Wilson yelled, shielding her with his own body. "She's fighting it." Inside Reed, the war raged. The voice of conditioning screamed, "Execute." Harrison's words fought back, "You decide." Her finger pulled, and the rifle thundered. Silence followed. The recoil echoed through the hills. Every eye snapped toward the compound. The mannequin stood untouched. The round had buried itself harmlessly in the dirt at its feet. She'd missed. On purpose. Her body shook violently, like the act of resistance had drained the last of her strength. She dropped the rifle. Breath ragged. Blake stared in disbelief. You didn't." The commander's voice cut in, sharp, cold. "That was an order, Sergeant. You just failed." Reed's reply came quiet but firm. "No, sir, I chose." The channel went dead. Back at the SUV, slammed his headset onto the dash. God damn it, she disobeyed a direct order. Harrison leaned back, relief and sorrow mixing in his eyes. No, she saved herself. His jaw clenched. She's useless to us now. Harrison's gaze turned hard. Then maybe she was never yours to use. In the field, the squad's tension cracked. Mitchell lowered his rifle, muttering, "Christ Almighty." Carter exhaled shakily, hands trembling. Blake, though, wasn't finished. He stepped toward Reed, fury in every line of his body. You jeopardize the mission. You're a danger to all of us. Reed lifted her head slowly, her eyes locked on his. No, Captain. I'm the only one here who remembers what it means to be human. The words hung, heavy, undeniable. Wilson helped her to her feet. For a moment the mask slipped and he saw it. Not the weapon, not the machine. The woman who carried scars, ghosts, burdens no one should bear, but still human. Blake looked away. No retort came, because deep down he knew she was right. Hours later the exercise ended. Dismissed the squad with clipped orders, evaluations incomplete, files classified, reports sealed. Reed walked off alone, boots crunching gravel. The forest air felt different now. Lighter, but not free, never free. At the edge of the field, Harrison waited. He didn't salute, didn't order, just stood. When she reached him, he spoke quietly. You know they'll come for you. She nodded, I know. You'll never stop running. Her eyes lifted to the horizon. Then I'll keep moving. He studied her for a long time. Finally, he straightened. And then, in a gesture that froze every soldier within sight, Colonel William Harrison, veteran of wars seen and unseen, raised his hand in a crisp salute. To her. No rank, no fanfare, no orders, just respect. Reed returned the gesture, brief, steady, and then she turned, vanishing into the pines like a ghost who had finally chosen her own path. The records would bury her again. The name would fade. The whispers of sleepwalker would twist in barracks for years, but those who had been there knew the truth. She was never just a weapon. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.